Amazon's entire model is built on social proof. If you think about the success and how you shop on Amazon, it's, especially as a marketer, sometimes it's embarrassing how easily we can be influenced by social proof.
Hello, and welcome to The Marketing Architects, a research-first podcast dedicated to answering your toughest marketing questions. I'm Elena Jasper. I run the marketing team here at Marketing Architects, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Angela Voss, the CEO of Marketing Architects, and Rob DeMars, the Chief Product Architect of Misfits and Machines.
Howdy. Hello.
We're back with our thoughts on some recent marketing news, always trying to root our opinions in data, research, and what drives business results. Today, we're talking about psychology's influence on marketing. What are some key principles in psychology that explain why we make the choices we do? And how can marketers use those principles to create more effective advertising? The content I chose probably isn't a huge surprise. It's Robert Cialdini's book, Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion. It's a New York Times bestseller, and it reveals powerful psychological tactics that can be applied to marketing. From using reciprocity to create loyalty, to scarcity to drive urgency, to social proof for building trust, his principles help us understand the psychology that drives purchasing decisions. Which is why, on today's episode, we'll cover each one, explain how it works, and share how you might use it for good, not evil, because they can be kind of evil sometimes, in your marketing. And if you start to go down the rabbit hole of marketing books, Influence is definitely a classic that you're bound to be recommended. I came across it early on in my marketing career while listening to the Marketing Book Podcast with Douglas Burdett. But Ange and Rob, I know you've both read Influence. Do you remember when you first came across it?
I believe it was probably 2 to 3 years after I started working at MA. So it was maybe like 2010, somewhere around there. What about you, Rob?
Oh, this thing's been around since the beginning of Marketing Architects. It was, Chuck, our founder, was always dropping books on our desks all the time. I've joked in the past that I didn't know if we were an ad agency or a Barnes and Noble. And this is one that has stuck. It's funny because the book itself is not that thick and the cover looks kind of cheesy, like it's a comic book. So I was totally in because it was short and looked like a comic book. but holy smokes, this book immediately was applicable from page one. And so, yeah, we devoured it. We shared it. I think every employee still gets one in their welcome box, don't they?
I think so. I know we've been rotating some of the books, but Rob, did you read Persuasion after you read Influence?
Well, I had to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That one's a little beefier. That one's not as cartoony for you. That was what, 2000? I think that maybe came out in like 2015 or 16 maybe. So it was a while.
I think the thing about his approach to persuasion is there's a lot of folks in the marketing community that spout off about what makes good ads, but he came from an academic approach, professor in a lab, and that was right up our alley. So it's good stuff.
Near and dear to our hearts.
I remember, Rob, I think Brent told me that Chuck used to recommend so many books, he made him wait like 30 days after he read one to push it to the company because it was just out of control.
There's a holding period.
Yep. Holding period. Well, let's get into the principles. There are 6 of them. They are reciprocity, consistency, social proof, liking, authority, and scarcity. So Rob, why don't you kick us off with reciprocity?
You gave me the hardest one to say.
Is it?
Reciprocity? It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but yes. The rule of reciprocity essentially states that people feel obligated to give back to others and who have given to them first. So Cialdini explains that we humans are wired to want to return favors and pay back our debts. When someone does something for us or gives us a gift, we feel a strong pull to reciprocate in some way. This sense of obligation is deeply ingrained and can overpower other factors. An example in the book that I always appreciated was when the waiter would leave a bill in a restaurant and would hand the customers a couple mints and then would turn away from the customers and then turn back around and go, "Hey, for you guys," and he would give them extra mints. And that strategy proved to produce a better tip for the waiter, right? I give you something, you give me something. In marketing, the principle of reciprocity is frequently used to influence consumer behavior. A simple example is offering free samples at a grocery store. By giving potential customers something for free, perhaps companies hope to instill a sense of reciprocity that will lead to an eventual purchase. Other marketing examples that are near and dear to my heart are sending unexpected gifts to loyal customers, providing helpful content or resources for free, and offering bonus products or discounts with a purchase. The idea is that by going above and beyond and giving something to someone, the customer's feeling appreciated and indebted and will become a more loyal customer. Cialdini always cautions about, as you guys know, the misuse of this kind of tactic. It's very powerful. It's very strong. But when it's used well, it really builds that loyalty and that relationship and that appreciation from the customer.
Another example he gave was, I think it was a religious organization giving you a rose. Like they would hand you a rose and then they'd ask you for a donation. And I always think about that if I see people giving out free stuff.
As consumers, we sort of are on the watch out for some of that stuff. When it's not done well, it can be a turnoff. So I think his point is really valid, that it needs to be done well, right? And I think when it is done well, we do want to give back.
All right, one down. And you're next. Let's talk about consistency.
Okay, consistency. So this one highlights that once people commit to something, they're more likely to follow through with it. So the behavior is driven by the desire to align our actions with our commitments and beliefs. We want to feel like we're good keepers of our word, right? I use this on my kids all the time. It's just as simple as something like, we're going to be leaving the house. And I'm like, guys, when we get home, what are we going to do? And they're like, clean our rooms. And I'm like, right, what in our room are we going to clean? What after the room? Are we going to clean the bathroom? You know, like I make them say
that works.
It absolutely does.
Oh my gosh.
And so then when we get home, I can go, okay, get started. And there's very little, if any, pushback. But if we come home and I haven't said it to them in advance, there's probably a couple things psychologically working in this example, but then I have like effectively destroyed their entire day with one simple command. And I think marketers leverage this by encouraging small initial commitments that can lead to larger actions, which just enhances our customer engagement and our loyalty. Almost the entire fitness industry plays on this principle. I sign up, and because I've committed to a month-long program, I'm more likely to feel the need to use it versus paying on a per-use basis of a gym or something like that. I even think about like Netflix shift from DVD rental to the streaming subscription model clearly leveraged the principle of consistency, right? They're transitioning customers towards a more convenient, a more innovative way of consuming content. And the move is, of course, aligned with the evolving digital consumption habits and preferences of their user base. If I'm subscribing to something, then I'm more likely to go there first than try to explore another app for trying to view content or trying to find a movie for the night.
Ange, do you think that free trials are an example of consistency? Like they're just trying to get you in the habit of using something and then you're more likely to continue with it?
Yeah, I think free trials play on a couple of them. I think that your free trial needs to be a good experience too. It's just like you can't fully put all of your weight into some of these influence tactics and ensure success. We need to make sure that the product is something that is valuable to the consumer. But yes, I think in some ways that does play into it.
One of my favorite examples of consistency is people, like if they come to your door and they're trying to sell you something, they won't start by saying, hey, will you donate to the youth in this community? They'll say, do you care about the kids in this community? And obviously you're probably going to say yes. And then they'll follow it up with, would you like to donate to, like, oh, that's so sneaky. Because once you say something, like you're more likely to want to follow through.
I think those kind of social contracts come through also, like when you go out to a fancy restaurant, it's like, okay, this is an agreement I'm sort of making that when I pass through this door, I will purchase a $12 Coke and not ask to split it with my wife. But it's just because you're just going in going, okay, this is what it is. Now you're making a commitment to this restaurant and you have to follow through now with ridiculous pricing.
I think it's such a great point. And even in thinking about this one and refreshing myself on Cialdini's principles, I kept confusing commitment with consistency. And I think for that very reason is they're so closely tied to, like, you're making an agreement with yourself about something, and then you want to commit to it and stay true to your word, even in your own head.
Let's move on to principle number 3. This is mine, and it's social proof. I love social proof. It's definitely a principle that I like to use when we're marketing our own agency. So, social proof. People were strongly influenced by the actions and behaviors of others. We all have an inherent tendency to follow the lead of those around us. As Cialdini puts it, we view a behavior as more correct in a given situation to the degree that we see others performing it. So, how might a marketer leverage social proof? You could use messaging that shows others are using or approving of your product or service. You see this through customer testimonials, influencer endorsements, or highlighting the large number of customers you have. Those all play into this innate desire that we have to align with others. And I was looking up some brands that use social proof well, and one example that came up was Airbnb. They showcase reviews and ratings from past guests on every listing. So when you see a listing with thousands of positive reviews, that's very persuasive. They even have this Superhost program that highlights hosts with stellar ratings across many stays, and that's just an automatic credibility builder. But the key for marketers in highlighting this is you want to highlight proof that your offering is a popular, accepted choice within your customer's peer group. We all want to go with the pack because at the end of the day, we all have this desire to go with the crowd and we want to do what others are doing.
It's instinctual, right? Kept us alive in years past to go with the pack. But Amazon's entire model is built on social proof. If you think about the success and how you shop on Amazon, it's, especially as a marketer, sometimes it's embarrassing how easily we can be influenced by social proof.
I think this is the most leveraged of his principles in today's world. When you think about, he wrote this book in 2000, 2001. This is before social media. And it's like now social media drives marketing, right? It's just being able to show the like button, right? I mean, that was one of the big factors for Facebook that made it take off is when they incorporated the like button. And it's just all those dopamine hit when we start seeing all these the masses going towards certain topics. We get excited by it. So I would imagine if he were to write the book today, that chapter would be a lot thicker.
Oh, absolutely. Think of all of the influencer marketing strategies that are out there. To some degree, even challenges that you even need a pack. I've got one person on TikTok telling me that this product is amazing or whatever, and I can be influenced by that just because I follow them on TikTok.
I think there's been a lot of products I could think of that become mainstream by like social proof alone, like the latest Yeti or Stanley, like all those cups that we all use, like the crossbody bag. It's like if you reach a certain tipping point, I own that stuff. Like you just end up wanting to have something that everybody else does. All right, next principle, Rob, we're back to you. Tell us about liking.
Liking. Well, this is one I've only read about because I can't get people to like me, but I'll tell you what it means. Oh. Simply put, we are more likely to be influenced by people we like. So Cialdini identifies several factors that lead to liking, like physical attractiveness, similarity, compliments, familiarity, and association. We tend to like people who are good looking, who are similar to us in various ways, who pay us compliments, who are familiar to us. We also like things that are associated with things that we like. And celebrities are a great example. We feel we are familiar with them and find them attractive. So we're influenced by their product endorsements, something we just talked about in a previous podcast not too long ago. The principles manifest in a lot of ways in marketing. Companies strive to have likable brands with relatable personalities. Again, hire a spokesperson or create mascots that are familiar and attractive or funny. A lot of times advertisements are casted very well so that they represent the target audience that they're trying to speak to. So again, seems more familiar. Brands also build liking through flattery. They compliment us, making us feel good about ourselves for using their products, and they foster familiarity through frequent exposure and consistent visual branding. Again, I think liking is definitely a key lever out there who doesn't want to be liked as human beings, and it makes sense that it's a very key component to his little war chest of persuasion tools.
It's obvious. As a brand, do you want to be liked? As a person, you want to be liked. A little harder maybe to get your hands around, okay, so what? What's the specific tactic, I guess, to use? Certainly as a brand, you don't want to be disliked, but it's a little more of a generic one.
But some of the other principles we've already called out, they're kind of connected. And I think this one's definitely connected to social proof because you want to be in the cool group.
I think this is where, though, when used maybe not as strategically, can lead to being in the sea of sameness potentially, right? I think about some of the brands that have come to us for help, sometimes they really start to look like all of their competitors. It's just like you can't tell one from the next. It's just like flying in the face of distinctive assets, but it's sort of following a trend in terms of how that brand is perceived and the tones they use and their color schemes and things like that. And you have to be careful, I guess, is what I'm saying, on what are you trying to follow there and what's the ultimate intent in trying to get that linking or the strategy behind it.
And sometimes that liking is kind of a journey. I mean, we've talked in the past about liquid death, and it's like, well, that seems a little polarizing. That doesn't seem like you're waving the liking flag when you're talking about liquid death. But then the more you realize they're talking about water, you're like, I like these folks, So there's just a little bit of a journey you have to go on, but it definitely stands out in that sea of sameness.
I think we probably experience this principle a lot as an agency. So when you're working with a brand, liking probably plays a huge role in when brands choose an agency partner. And sometimes you connect more with like certain marketing teams. And so I think that principle probably comes into play more than you'd think in like the agency hiring process. Okay, Ange, you're up next. We're at authority.
Yeah, well, I think to Rob's point, some of these are really closely connected. And so on authority, we're sort of close to social proof, I think, too, and especially the way social proof is used today. So authority suggests, right, that people are more likely to comply with advice or demands made by authoritative figures. And this principle is really rooted in social psychology, where authority conveys credibility and expertise and makes messages just more persuasive in general. So in marketing, leveraging authority can involve endorsements from experts. It can be certifications. It can be showcasing industry accolades to enhance trust and ultimately influence decision making. And I think many industries use this principle in different ways to influence consumers. If you think about like the pharmaceutical industry uses doctors to endorse medications, which showcases their medical expertise. So you've got tech companies that leverage industry experts to validate the effectiveness of their product. Something like the financial service industry, right? Brands frequently highlight endorsements from well-regarded financial analysts, or they use certifications to build credibility. And so the list goes on and on. I think you could argue that celebrity endorsers are an example of authority. In some cases, I would say, depending on the brand and their endorser, are they credited to being authoritative in that field? Not always, but if you think about something like Michael Jordan and Nike, you can see how authority can play really well.
I think authority is super interesting because we're sort of hard-coded as children to respect authority and to do what authority tells us to. So much so that in children advertising, you can't actually tell them to do something. You can't say, go to the website. You can say, you can go to this website. So I think we're just hardwired to respect that. And we're always looking for our Yoda, right, to tell us the right product in life to make us happier. So yeah, makes sense.
I think that the whole content marketing industry is sort of born out of this principle. That's what we try to do as an agency, is you produce content to show that you're an expert, and then maybe someone's more likely to hire you because they see that you're an authority on a topic. We have one last principle to cover, which is scarcity. And I'm going to bring us home with this one. Scarcity, it's the psychological bias that makes us place greater value on things that are scarce, shrinking in availability, or difficult to obtain. We are all hardwired with FOMO, or the fear of missing out, when our options are limited. And marketers can absolutely capitalize on this. If you create a sense of urgency and scarcity around a product or offer, like a flash sale or a limited time discount, it inherently boosts the desirability of what you're selling. Nike is a brand that definitely feels scarcity with limited edition sneaker releases. They'll produce extremely small batches of shoes, which creates this artificial scarcity that then boosts resale value. Customers even camp overnight for a chance at the latest drop, and I think we see this a lot for other brands too. So scarcity works, but be wary, because this is one of those principles that can definitely be used for evil and will damage trust if your offers aren't genuine. I know that I feel that sometimes when you go to a website, you see a certain limited time offer and you see it over and over again, and you start to lose a little bit of trust with the brand if you feel like they're taking advantage of you a bit.
Agreed. Yeah, that one can rub you the wrong way really easily, I think, if you're kind of clued into enough of what's going on there.
It's the one for me that even when I know it's not true, it still creates anxiety within me. But maybe it is real. Like I don't. It's the one that always gets me the most.
I completely agree. I know we were going to move into when's the last time that it worked on you? That's my example, because that one, it's really hard for me to ignore it. Even when it's not being used as a marketing principle, or actually it probably makes sense when it's not being used in a marketing principle, but like something that I know there's a finite number for, the shoes are a great example, or like hotel rooms. If I'm going to book a vacation, I am obsessed with like, as soon as we know we're going to go, I am like, we got to lock in our room wherever we want it to be. And it could be months and months, and we might not even be fully confirmed that we're going to go. But it's like, I know there's a finite number of rooms that are available, and I lock it in.
I know that Amazon, they do that artificially a lot. We have a book that the agency wrote that's on Amazon. And I went there to look at the page for some reason, and I saw it said only like 2 left. So I reached out to them. I'm like, hey, we shouldn't be like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, we should always have a supply of these books. And they said, oh no, that's not real. Like, there's plenty left. I'm like, wait, what?
Oh no.
So I think sometimes they even, not sometimes, I know sometimes they do that just to create like a sense of, oh, this is running out.
Busted.
Very sneaky.
Yeah,
Wow.
I always see that too on like flights, and it'll get me on flights for sure, where they'll do the same thing. You know, there's 3 left at this price, or you're like, really? Are you going to change the price by $1, or is it going to go up by $100?
Well, and my example of an influence principle working on me was also a scarcity example. I struggle with this all the time when I'm negotiating trade show agreements for the agency. They'll always do this thing, oh, well, you got to let us know by Friday. Another company is interested in this. And I have to have my coworker, Clark, like talk me down and remind me, no, it's going to be there. It's going to be, because I'll just be like, no, we have to. We're going to lose the offer. And we never lose it. You can take your time. You don't have to do it. But I have to like get emotional support because it's so uncomfortable to feel like I'm about to lose an opportunity or there's not enough left. And I deal with that quite a bit.
I think for a recent example for me is also travel related, but it was on reciprocity. We just lived in a hotel for a week, and that whole ecosystem is built on reciprocity, right? So from the choice of hotel that you go, oh, this one's, I get the points for it, to the tipping of the bellhop who carry your bag for 15 feet, to, oh, I got a room upgrade, to tipping the cleaning person because they left you a handwritten note, to the most expensive complimentary breakfast you'll ever eat. It's absolute reciprocity from check-in to checkout.
That one plays on consistency too, I would say, especially with the points, right? They work. I mean, proven.
They definitely work. Hopefully this episode was helpful for people, a little review of the principles and some ways to use them in your marketing, hopefully for good and not for evil, because I think they definitely can be used in some nefarious ways. But with that, I think we'll wrap it up. That's it for this episode of The Marketing Architects. We'd like to thank Ayana Klaphocky for producing the show and Taylor De Los Reyes for editing. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and if you find the show valuable, please leave us a rating and review. And if you'd like to hear more from us, subscribe to our weekly email newsletter. It's built for marketers seeking research-first analysis of the latest trends. You can go to marketingarchitects.com/newsletter to subscribe. Now go forth and build great marketing. Yeah, if you can't say reciprocity, we're in dangerous territory with immutable.
Reciprocity does not roll off the tongue.
I've never heard someone have a problem with reciprocity.
But you hang out with smart people. I don't know.